Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and this evening we'll be having a look at the GFS, the GEM, the ECMWF and the GFS ensembles for the weather over the next 2 weeks. And it is looking like it's going to be very dry, fine and potentially even spring-like over the next 5 days or so. And then it does look like winter could be biting back again come next weekend. Do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you do like and subscribe, as it does really help me out. But currently we're looking at the GFS, and you can see we've got this ridge of high pressure which is giving us our very fine and dry and relatively mild, if not a little bit warm in the sunshine, with sort of spring-like conditions for this end of February. You can see high pressure really does build across the country, and we do sort of see this sort of easterly flow, but it's not really cold easterly flow. It's very much quite a mild easterly flow. It's not warm either, but it's going to be having daytime highs of maybe 10 to 15 degrees, depending on the exact wind direction. Near the coast, again, if you've got an offshore breeze, it could be a little bit cooler, maybe a little bit of cloud around. But it's looking generally very dry, very bright, sunny, very little cloud around, and quite mild and warm. There is a brief weather front that is passing through central areas over the weekend. It's a weakening cold front, so there could be a few bits of patchy drizzle on that and a bit more cloud, but it should fizzle out and most areas will go dry and fine for early next week. And you can see really this high pressure dominates, and we maintain these sort of very static sort of airflow. You can see it's generally quite mild and warm, but it's interesting to see we're seeing this low pressure driving up some warm air advection into Greenland, along with a build of high pressure. Now, this is one last go at some wintry and cold conditions for this winter. There is still potential, for very cold easterlies towards the end of March for any proper wintry conditions, though. This is really the last go the weather's going to have this winter. And you can see high pressure makes its way up towards Greenland, Iceland, builds sort of an Iceland high, and we do start to bring in an easterly wind. Now, there's pretty cold air to our east and our north, and we do pull in some very chilly air. And that's going to get in. It probably will give, under air of high pressure, some very cold overnight temperatures. Quite hard frost potentially with that, so watch out, gardeners, for that. Some areas could see some wintry showers, maybe some snow. Again, it's high pressure dominated, but an easterly wind coming off a cool North Sea. That temperature contrast is likely to be producing some convective showers. Now, it's not going to be a beast from the east, nothing like that, but an easterly wind always going to have some showers coming off the east coast. So some areas could see some snow flurries, any settling snow for any lowland areas, unless it's really intense snow, which is unlikely with this sort of slack flow. It's going to have to be falling at night for any chance of any settling at all. So on that perspective, it's likely we could be seeing some snow with this, likely see some very cold conditions overnight, but generally it shouldn't be disruptive, and that's the big thing with this. Other than an overnight frost and some ice, you can see we sort of pull this easterly wind in. The high pressure never gets too far north, so it never pulls in this brutally cold air over northern Scandinavia and Siberia, but we do pull in a brief, very cold easterly wind before high pressure builds again, and we start to pull in actually a warm southwesterly for the end of the run, before going more low pressure dominated, very westerly again. So again, potential for very nice spring-like conditions over the next 5 days or so before things turn interesting again. Still relatively dry, but turning probably quite a bit colder. Maybe daytime highs of 4, 5, 6 degrees. Overnight lows getting down to a couple of degrees below freezing. Quite widely, if we do see those upper air temperatures getting down to that low, getting down to like -5 and below. And again, a few wintry showers, especially more towards the southeast, where we're close to low pressure. We have those winds coming off the North Sea. Now, if I have a look at the GEM run, again, very similar pattern over the next few days, with high pressure dominating, quite mild, warm conditions, and then we start to see that high build to our north. Now, it doesn't pull in a proper cold easterly wind, but we sort of see a northeasterly flow. So it does get some cooler northeasterly winds in with some cold air. Again, wouldn't be brutally cold if that's one. Most likely daytime highs maybe 6, 7, 8 degrees. Lows maybe getting down to freezing, but not really a hard frost with that. As you can see, the very cold air never really gets towards the UK, and you can see the high pressure sort of topples, low pressure comes in, and you can see the block that we did kind of have up on the GFS over Iceland sort of sets up more towards northern Canada, just pushing cold air into the Atlantic, which will probably fuel up the jet stream, and we will probably see quite a onslaught of low pressure systems. Yes, there'll be some cold air within those low pressure systems, but it'll be brief, most likely just be fueling quite strong winds and heavy rain. So even though the GFS one is colder, it's probably a better scenario for all, considering it'll be drier and still will be fine in the day, even though it may feel quite nippy and cold. If we now have a look at the ECMWF run, you can see a very similar pattern over the next few days. High pressure builds, then builds up to our north towards Iceland. It actually builds further north on this ECMWF run, and we do start to put in some quite cold and far-fetched northeasterly winds. And you can see some quite bitterly cold air gets through the country. Now that would provide probably more widespread snow showers, as the high pressure is further to our north and our west, but most of the east is under a sort of lower pressure. That would be driving in quite cold snow showers. You can see the temperature deviation, bitterly cold, even towards the southeast, getting down to maybe minus 12 degrees below average. You can see some very cold air gets through on this ECMWF run. This high pressure is toppling though. You can see low pressure moving to its north. It is a toppling area of high pressure. So it may only last a couple days, whereas the GFS lasts longer, but is much drier and not as cold. So with the ECMWF, we could be seeing a couple, quite a bitterly cold 2 or 3 day cold snap. If we do get that minus 10 isotherm through, I wouldn't be surprised if daytime temperatures only got up to 1 or 2 degrees and lows getting down very low. Again, this time of year to get proper bitterly cold conditions, sort of around freezing like we had a few weeks ago, where it was only getting up to freezing 1 degree for 4 or 5 days straight earlier in February. If we want those sort of conditions, you're going to really need some bitterly cold air aloft, as the sun is always going to be is always getting stronger, and it's going to be warming up the surface much quicker than it would have done in January or December, or even earlier in February. So even though those upper areas are very cold, it's probably only going to be maybe 1 or 2 degrees in the day, and maybe quite a bit colder at night. And if we do see that bitterly cold sort of easterly or northeasterly flow, it could feel a lot colder in that wind. Again, only lasting 2 or 3 days, so it shouldn't be too disruptive with that, as it does look like it will topple before anything amounts to too much. But, you know, we could see a few snow showers around and some quite cold conditions and some hard overnight frosts. Now, if we have a look at the GFS ensembles, you can see at the moment we've got these about 4 or 5 degrees above average, quite pleasant days, sunny, higher pressure, no chance of any precipitation, and then you see that drop to much colder conditions. You can see the GFS is around, it's probably on the colder end of the spectrum, but it's not an outlier. There's plenty of ensemble members going that cold. Most are still dipping to around average or below, so definitely going colder, and it's still dry. No big areas of low pressure, but it's introducing some precipitation, which will probably be in the form of showers coming off the North Sea. Now, the ECMWF run that got down to minus 10 would have been an outlier on this GFS ensembles, if you put it in here. There are maybe 3 or 4 going down to minus 10. But it's, again, you still have to call it an outlier with that ECMWF run. But it did do that on the midnight run again last night as well. So it could be, the ECMWF could be onto something there. Generally, in the longer term, it does remain around average, with more precipitation picking up. Having looked at the latest forecast for the stratosphere, and we had a sun stratospheric warming in early January, which meant polar vortex was weakened, and amplification of the jet stream blocking. That's why we've seen some quite cold conditions through end of January, early February. Not a beast from the east or classic beast from the east setup, but we saw a very cold for sort of 5, 6, 7 day spell. Some areas saw quite a lot of snow, but a couple 2 or 3 days of some cold conditions, some big snow events of some regions. That was all caused by the sudden stratospheric warming and general blocking pattern we had. But what's interesting is the polar vortex at 10 HPA sort of reverse what it normally would do this time of the year. And this time of year, it would be weakening slowly, and potential would have a minor sudden stratospheric warming. And that's why we sometimes see, it's why it's quite often you see easterlies in March, because we do get a sort of a minor sudden stratospheric warming, which can pull off an easterly in March. But this year, the stratosphere is remaining very strong. It's almost going to be record strength for March, what was sort of end of February, March, which is not super strong for the polar vortex, but it's much stronger than it should be at this time of year. And I do suspect that that's going to allow the jet stream to really ramp up. And that's what I think these ensembles are looking at, with a lot of precipitation and around average temperatures. Probably will be sort of a zonal sine wave once these do sort of configure where the lows are going to be and where the high pressure is going to be as it comes through, because it will be a low pressure ridge of high pressure, low pressure ridge of high pressure, and it could produce some very unsettled and stormy conditions. Depending on exactly where the jet stream sets up, it could mean that some parts of Scotland and over the Highlands could see a lot of snow. We saw that last year with the strongest polar vortex, low pressures. The jet stream was going through southern England, so much of northern areas in Scotland was in the colder side of the jet. Not really cold enough for snow, low levels, around average at low levels, but up in the mountains we could be seeing a lot of snow if we do see these sort of average conditions with high precipitation. But it's just really one to watch in the longer term. At the moment it looks high pressure dominated, high pressure moving a bit northwards, allowing colder air to seep in. We don't really know at this stage how cold it's going to get, but it definitely looks like it's going to be getting quite substantially colder than it has been, maybe 5-10 degrees colder than it has been at least at 850 HPA. And then it looks like potentially the Atlantic could open up again with low pressure and a lot of precipitation and around average conditions. If we have a look at the 2 meter temperatures, you can see right now around 10-12 degrees highs, lows around 5-6 degrees. A bit nippy outside overnight as we've got clear skies. Could keep getting down to frost in some rural areas, but then you see that drop off to next week, where highs are only, or sort of next weekend, sorry, where highs are only 4-5-6 degrees on the average, and could be a bit lower, maybe 2 or 3 degrees on some ensemble members. And then you can see even getting down to freezing some of the days before it does pick up again to around average, sort of 7-8-9 degrees, but again with a lot of precipitation around. It's going to be interesting what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. But for all those out there who enjoy spring-like weather, warm sunshine, you're going to be getting that over the next 4 or 5 days. Then it's the coldies who we're going to enjoy probably next weekend, as we do look like we're going to be bringing it back in a northeasterly wind, which again could produce some snow. But don't get your hopes up, as this time of year we really do need something spectacular, sort of like a beast from the east, to get widespread snow for many areas, even lowland areas. You may see a few snow showers, but any substantial snow like we saw in January and even in early March with that cold spell of easterlies, it's unlikely we'll be seeing anything like that. It's just looking like a sort of a northeasterly, maybe 3 or 4 day blast at this stage. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.